Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And if you've recently subscribed, we really appreciate you following us. This is going to be a short video talking about our trip from Annapolis, Maryland down to Kinsale, Virginia, which is where MV Providence, our 1984 Tallycraft 43, now calls home. She is a aft cabin motor yacht with a pilot house. The crew consists of Emily, my better half, and Jacob, my son. The first leg of the trip took us from where we purchased the boat down to Annapolis Harbor, where we picked up some fuel. That was a harrowing experience for us because once we got there, we had to sit there and wait for a few boats to get out of our way before we could pull up to the fuel dock. And after shutting the motors off, topping off the tanks with 75 gallons on each side, just enough to get us to where we needed to go, the batteries were dead and it didn't start. Horrible feeling when you turn the boat off for the first time, and when you go to restart and everybody's staring at you because people are waiting for you at the fuel dock and nothing happens. Fortunately, we had a jump box with us and were able to jump across the batteries after combining everything and got her fired up, and the rest of the trip went just fine. From Annapolis, we went south to Calvert's Marina on Solomon's Island, which was going to be our first stop for the day. That trip took us about 6 hours, and when we pulled into the marina, it was nice and calm, just before dusk. The trip down the bay was super nice. It was fairly calm. It was a clear day, a little bit chilly, but the seas were in good shape, and the boat did wonderfully. We had no issues at all. We had a little bit of coffee along the way, and Jacob and I and our dog Sam had a really nice trip for the first leg of the journey. You know, for taking the boat out for the first time without ever having driven it much, the boat handled remarkably well. Easy to steer. We got her up to about 10 knots for most of the trip just to try and exercise the engines a while because it had been sitting for some time prior to us getting it. But we never had any trouble. We had several engine checks along the way without any problems. The engine stayed nice and cool. Vibration free. We never had any issues, and like I said, pulling into the marina, we were greeted with a beautiful sunset. We'd only planned to stay one night at Calvert's Marina as it was the weekend, and first trip. Jacob had school on Monday, or at least virtual school on Monday due to the pandemic. But when we woke up, the wind was blowing a little bit harder than we thought it was going to be. We decided to go ahead and try and get the boat underway, and as soon as we left Solomon's Island, we realized that the sea conditions were, or the bay conditions were, much worse than we had anticipated. We were met with 20-mile-an-hour winds with 25-mile-an-hour gusts, and based on the direction of the wind at the time, the bay had gotten up to where we had seas in the 5 and 6 foot range with a pretty close time period, and it was super uncomfortable. And like I said, after only having driven the boat for one day for approximately 50 nautical miles, I was uncomfortable putting ourselves in a position out in that sea state. So we turned around, surfed a couple ways back in, and came back to Calvert's Marina, and took advantage of that day to replace the batteries that had given us a trouble at the dock. We woke up the next morning to calmer seas and lighter winds, and the Chesapeake had had a chance to kind of settle down some. We had a little bit more time because Jacob had to go through his virtual school for the day, and we took off outside of Solomon's Island, back out on the bay around 11:30, 12 o'clock. We had about a 5-hour run to get down to Kinsale, and we knew we'd be pushing it in the dark. It was a little chillier, though, and Sam spent a lot of time curled up on his blanket outside of the wind. The trip went smooth, though. The boat handled well. After the batteries, it started right back up. We had no issues with fuel or anything like that, so we were really happy with our trip. Once we got settled, we wanted to take a few pictures of the inside of the boat to kind of show you where we were. We have, of course, a down galley with all of the things, a sink, a stove, lots of cabinet space, lots of countertops. The boat has an interior pilot house that I think is going to work really well when the weather's bad. We have good sight lines all around. It's going to be easy to steer, easy to operate. The salon is nice and big. It's got a full wraparound couch and a companionway that leads to the outside deck. That seems to be the safest way to get in and out of the boat while we're underway. That way you're not walking around the outsides. We do, of course, have 2 doors that lead either to the port or the starboard side, but I think that aft companionway is really the way to go. It's lots of space, a lot more space than we really thought, and believe it or not, the headroom is good too. I am 6'9", and it is 6'9" on the inside, so there's plenty of room to walk around. The aft cabin has got a walk-around queen with its own ensuite bath. Plenty of space back down there. I do have to bend over a little bit, but it's still nice and comfortable. And up forward, there is another queen-size berth just on the other side of the galley that my son, who is 6'6", can sleep in very comfortably. It also has its own bathroom, but we have plans for that a little bit later. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the short video we had here. There'll be more to come. If you liked the video, please subscribe and hit that like button, and we'll see you soon.